My family didn't lend me money to start my business because they chose to invest in my sister's company. When she went bankrupt, they demanded I transfer everything I built to her. Hi there, I'm Michael. I'm 35 years old. And this is the story of how my own family tried to destroy everything I built with my own hands. Trust me, by the time you finish reading this, you'll understand why sometimes blood isn't thicker than water. It all started 5 years ago. I was working as a systems engineer at a mid-sized company, but I always had the dream of opening my own tech consulting firm. I'd identified a specific niche, helping small and medium businesses digitize their processes efficiently and cost-effectively. I had the experience, the contacts, and most importantly, a solid business plan. My family always was peculiar about money. My parents, Carol and Robert, own a hardware store that's done pretty well over the years. We're not millionaires, but we're not struggling either. My younger sister, Sophie, 32, was always the golden child of the house. She was that typical sister who could do anything, and my parents would defend her to death. When I presented my business idea to my parents, I had prepared everything meticulously. I had financial projections, market analysis. I had even secured 3 potential clients who were ready to sign contracts as soon as I opened the consultancy. I only needed $60,000 to start. Equipment, small. Office operational expenses for the first 6 months. I remember that Sunday afternoon perfectly. We were at my parents' house after family lunch. Sophie was there too with her husband Daniel. I explained the whole project to them, showed them the numbers, the projections. My dad listened attentively. My mom asked smart questions. I thought it was going well. "Son," my dad finally said, "your plan looks really good, honestly. But you know these tech businesses are very risky. What if it doesn't work out? That's a lot of money." "Dad," I replied, "it's not a gift, it's a loan with interest. I have the payment plan right here. In 2 years, I'll pay you back everything with 8% annual interest." My mom chimed in. "It's just that, honey, right now we have other commitments. The hardware store needs renovation, and you know unexpected expenses always come up." I left there discouraged, but I didn't give up. Over the following weeks, I kept insisting, refining my proposal, looking for ways to reduce the initial investment. Nothing. There was always an excuse. 3 weeks later, Sophie invited us all to dinner at an upscale restaurant. She had exciting news to share. "Family," she announced with a huge smile. "Daniel and I have decided to open our own women's boutique. It's going to be amazing with the latest fashion trends, imported clothes, all top quality." Daniel, who worked in sales for a cosmetics company, added, "We already found the perfect location in the most exclusive shopping district in town. It's going to be a guaranteed success." My mum almost started clapping. "How exciting! A boutique! How elegant! But we need an initial investment," Sophie continued. "The space, the merchandise, the decoration, permits, we're talking about $90,000. That's when I froze. They were asking for $30,000 more than what I had asked for a business in a super competitive industry with no prior experience, and my parents seemed delighted. "Of course we'll support you," my dad exclaimed without hesitating for even a second. "This is a wonderful opportunity. A boutique in that area is going to be a guaranteed success." "But Dad," I interrupted, trying to stay calm, "3 weeks ago you told me you didn't have available money to invest in businesses." An uncomfortable silence fell. My dad looked at me with that expression he used to make when he was going to scold me as a child. "Michael, this is different. Clothing will always have demand. It's a traditional business, understandable. Your thing is very technical. We don't really understand how it works." "But I explained everything in detail. I have clients waiting." Sophie looked at me with pity. "Oh, brother, don't be jealous. Besides, you have a stable job. We're risking everything for this dream." That night, I went home furious. My wife, Laura, consoled me as best she could, but I was devastated. It wasn't just the money, it was the lack of confidence in me. It was the obvious way they preferred Sophie. Over the following months, I had to watch as my parents not only gave them the $90,000, but also helped them with contacts, promotion. They even worked for free some weekends to help with the grand opening. Meanwhile, I continued with my employee job, saving every dollar I could, refinancing my credit card, asking for small loans from friends. Those were very tough months financially for Laura and me. Sophie's boutique opened with great fanfare. My parents invited half the town to the grand opening. It seemed like everything was going smoothly, but I remained firm in my plan. If the family didn't believe in me, I was going to prove them wrong. Finally, after 8 months of struggle, I managed to gather enough money to start my consultancy very modestly. I rented a small shared space, bought basic equipment, and started with my first clients. The first months were brutal. I worked at my day job and on my business at night and weekends. Laura had to take part-time jobs to help with expenses, but little by little things started working. My first big client was a pharmacy chain that needed to digitize their inventory system. The project was a complete success and they recommended me to other companies. In 6 months, I already had 5 steady clients and had hired my first employee. Meanwhile, Sophie's boutique started showing cracks. Turns out opening a luxury clothing store in a medium-sized city wasn't as easy as it seemed. Merchandise moved slowly, operational costs were high, and there was more and more competition. At family gatherings, Sophie always had excuses. People here don't appreciate good fashion. Suppliers have failed us, it's low season. My parents always consoled her and even gave her 2 additional loans of $22,500 each. Nobody cared how I was doing. When I mentioned any success from my consultancy, they always quickly changed the subject. It was like my business was invisible to them. The breaking point came exactly 2 years after opening my consultancy. By then, I already had 8 employees, my own office, and contracts with some of the most important companies in the region. My monthly billing was almost $300,000. It was my mum's birthday, and the whole family was gathered. Sophie arrived looking like she was at a funeral. "Family," she announced dramatically, "I have to tell you something very difficult. The boutique is going to close." The shock on my parents' faces was total. Daniel explained that they had accumulated debts of almost $150,000 between suppliers, back rent, and taxes. They could no longer sustain the business. "But don't worry," Sophie continued. "Michael is going to help us." "Excuse me," I said, almost spitting out my coffee. "Brother, you're the successful businessman of the family now. It's your responsibility to help us. We're family." My dad nodded vigorously. "Sophie's right, son. Your business is doing very well and they're going through a tough time. That's what families do." "Wait," I said, feeling my blood pressure rising. "Are you seriously asking me to use my company's money to save the business that you financed when you told me no?" "Michael, don't be selfish," my mom scolded me. "Your sister needs help." "Look," Sophie intervened with tears in her eyes, "I know you're resentful because Mom and Dad supported us first, but now you have the chance to do the right thing." "The right thing? The right thing?" I finally exploded. "You know what would have been the right thing? Believing in me when I presented you with a solid business plan, treating me with the same respect as Sophie, not making me feel like a second-class citizen in my own family." "Don't raise your voice," my dad threatened. "The only one who's made mistakes here is you, by not understanding that family supports each other." That's when the idea occurred to me. A smile spread across my face as I looked at all of them waiting for my answer. "All right," I told them calmly. "I'm going to help you." Sophie got super happy. My parents sighed with relief. "But," I continued, "not with money." The confusion on their faces was palpable. "I'm going to help you the same way you helped me, with the same level of support and confidence you gave me." "What do you mean?" my mom asked, frowning. "I'm going to give you exactly the same amount of money you gave me to start my business." Dead silence fell over the table. "That is $0, I clarified, in case it wasn't clear. Daniel turned red. "You can't do that. We're family." "Exactly," I replied. "We're family. And when I needed help from my family to start my business, you told me it was too risky, that you didn't have available money, that my plan wasn't good enough. Now you're in the same situation I was in, so I'm giving you the same advice you gave me. Look for other options." "Michael, this is different," my dad protested. "They already invested everything. If they lose the boutique, they lose everything. Dad, do you know what I would have lost if my consultancy didn't work? My house, because I mortgaged it to get money. My kids' college savings. My family's financial stability. But you didn't care about that risk when it was me taking it." Sophie started crying. "I can't believe you're being so cruel. Your own sister." "Cruel? Cruel?" I laughed bitterly. "You know what's cruel. Telling your son his dream isn't worth it and then giving your daughter $135,000 to open a store that anyone with half a brain knew was going to fail." My mum started crying too. Son, please don't be like this. We made a mistake with you, okay, we admit it, but this is an emergency. Now you admit you made a mistake, I asked them. After 2 years watching my business grow without your help, after ignoring every achievement I accomplished, after treating me like I was invisible at every family gathering, I got up from the table and headed toward the door. Michael, where are you going? My dad shouted. I'm going home, Dad. To the house I pay for with money I earn from the business you said would fail. When you're ready to treat me with the same respect as Sophie, call me. That night, Laura hugged me while I told her everything. You did the right thing, she said. It was about time you told them their truths, but this was just getting started. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since the confrontation at my parents' house, and things have gotten interesting. First, Sophie and Daniel had to close the boutique, just as they had said. But not content with that, they decided to start a smear campaign against me with all the extended family. My Aunt Patricia called me last week. Michael, is it true that you're refusing to help your sister? Your cousin Elena says Sophie is devastated. Aunt, I explained, I'm not refusing to help her. I'm simply giving them the same support they gave me when I was starting. But honey, that sounds very vindictive. Vindictive? Aunt, did you know that when I asked for help for my business, my parents told me they didn't have money, but 3 weeks later, they gave Sophie $90,000 to open a store. Silence on the other end of the line. I didn't know that, my aunt murmured. And so it went with several relatives. Sophie had been telling only her version of the story, painting me as the evil brother who refused to help his poor bankrupt sister. But when I told the complete story, reactions changed dramatically. My cousin Javier, who's an accountant, told me, Brother, after hearing both sides of the story, I think your parents screwed up. Anyone with business experience would have given the money to you, not Sophie. But the real bombshell came last Tuesday. My dad showed up at my office unannounced. Son, we need to talk, he said with a serious face. I invited him in. My new office is quite impressive. 12th floor of a corporate building, panoramic city view, conference room with cutting-edge technology. I could tell he was surprised by the size of the operation. All this is yours? He asked, seeing my employees working. Yes, Dad, this is what I built with my business plan that you said was too risky. He sat in my office and got straight to the point. Your mom and I have been thinking. Maybe we were too hard on you 2 years ago. Maybe. Okay, we made a mistake. But Michael, your sister is in bad shape. She and Daniel are getting divorced because of the debt stress. The kids are suffering. That's when I knew the low blow was coming. We want to propose something to you, he continued. How about Sophie comes to work with you? She could learn the business, you train her, and eventually she becomes your partner. I stayed quiet for a moment, processing what I had just heard. Dad, I finally said, are you asking me to give away part of my company to Sophie? It's not giving away. It's including family in the business. The business I built alone, without help from you, after you rejected me. Michael, don't be resentful. This would be good for everyone. A family business. I started laughing. I couldn't help it. Dad, this isn't a family business. This is my business. I built it with my money, my time, my effort, and my knowledge. Sophie doesn't know anything about technology, doesn't know anything about consulting, has no experience managing successful companies. She can learn. How is she going to learn to manage a successful company if she just bankrupted hers? My dad turned red with anger. Michael, Sophie is your sister. Family helps each other. Dad, I said, getting up from my chair, when I was your son asking for help, family didn't help me. Now that I'm successful, suddenly family wants to participate in the benefits. It doesn't work that way. You're being very selfish. Selfish? Dad, I have 8 employees who depend on me. I have million-dollar contracts to manage. I have a reputation to maintain. Do you really think I'm going to risk all that so Sophie can learn with my company? My dad stood up too. So that's your final word? No, Dad. My final word is this. The day you treat me with the same respect as Sophie, the day you publicly acknowledge that you were wrong about me, the day you sincerely apologize for the way you treated me, that day we can talk about being a real family. Until then, don't come asking me for favors. He left without saying goodbye, but you can't imagine what I discovered that same afternoon. Update 2. Turns out Laura, my wife, is much smarter than I thought. She had been doing her own investigation about Sophie's boutique, and what she discovered left me speechless. Michael, she told me that night during dinner. "I have to tell you something about your sister's business." She pulled out a folder full of documents printed from the internet. "I started investigating the boutique's social media, online reviews, and some public data from business records." "And what did you find?" "Your sister never had a real business, Michael. It was all a facade." My jaw dropped. "Look," she showed me Instagram screenshots. "The new merchandise photos Sophie posted are from Chinese online stores. She literally copied the photos and uploaded them as if it were her inventory." She kept showing me evidence. Fake invoices, suppliers that didn't exist, satisfied customers who turned out to be stock photos from the internet. "Are you telling me Sophie stole the $135,000 from my parents?" "Not exactly stole," Laura explained. "She did open the boutique. She did buy some merchandise, but most of the money was spent on something else." "On what?" Laura showed me photos from Sophie and Daniel's social media from the past 2 years. Trips to Cancun, dinners at expensive restaurants, designer clothes, a new car. "They spent the investment money on living a luxury lifestyle for 2 years, Michael. The boutique was just the excuse." I was in shock. For 2 years I had thought my parents had invested in a legitimate business that had simply failed. Turns out they had financed Sophie's extravagant lifestyle. The next day, I hired a private investigator to get me more details. The results came a week later and were even worse than I had imagined. Sophie had lied about the debts too. She didn't owe $150,000 to suppliers and the IRS. Most of those debts were personal loans that she and Daniel had taken out to continue financing their lifestyle after they spent my parents' investment. Armed with all this information, I decided to do something I never thought I would do: confront my parents with the truth. I invited them to lunch at a nice restaurant, a place where they couldn't make a scene. I told them I had something important to discuss with them. "Mom, Dad," I said after the food arrived, "I have to tell you something about Sophie's boutique." I showed them all the evidence I had compiled: the fake photos, the non-existent suppliers, the duplicate invoices, the luxury trips financed with the investment money. My mom went pale. My dad couldn't close his mouth. This can't be true," my mom murmured. "Mom, I hired a professional investigator. Everything is documented." My dad grabbed the documents and studied them in more detail. As an experienced businessman, he knew how to recognize a scam when he saw one. "Son of a..." he started, but controlled himself. "I can't believe our own daughter scammed us." "Dad," I said softly, "now do you understand why I don't want to include family in my business? Sophie isn't a businesswoman who had bad luck. She's a scammer who used you to finance her lifestyle." My mom started crying. "Michael, we didn't know any of this." "I know, Mom, but now do you understand why I felt so betrayed when you rejected me and gave everything to her without asking the basic questions any investor would ask?" My dad looked me in the eyes for the first time in a long time. "Son," he said, "I owe you a very big apology. Not just for the money, for not believing in you, for being so blind about your sister, for treating you like a second-class citizen." "Me too," my mom added. "We got carried away by, I don't know, maybe because Sophie was always more dramatic, more demanding of attention. You were always so independent that we assumed you didn't need us." "I did need you," I told them. "It wasn't just the money, it was your support, your confidence, your respect." "Can you forgive us?" my dad asked. "I forgave you a long time ago, Dad, but I needed you to understand why I acted the way I did." We left that lunch with a completely different relationship. My parents had finally understood that they had made a serious mistake, not just with the money, but with the way they had treated me my whole life. But the story didn't end there, because now they had to deal with Sophie. Update 3. The last 6 months have been an emotional roller coaster for the whole family, but I can finally say things have settled, and not exactly as Sophie expected. After my parents discovered the truth about the boutique scam, they decided to confront her directly. The family meeting that followed was epic. My parents showed her all the evidence I had compiled. Sophie tried to deny it at first, then justify it. We needed to live while the business took off, and finally broke down in dramatic tears when she realized she could no longer manipulate the situation. "Are you going to believe Michael more than your own daughter?" she screamed between sobs. "Sophie," my dad said, in a voice I had never heard from him, "this isn't about who we believe. It's about official documents, invoices, evidence. You scammed us." Daniel, Sophie's husband, tried to defend the indefensible, but when my parents showed him photos of all the trips and luxuries they had enjoyed with the investment money, he also fell silent. The immediate consequence was that my parents demanded they return the full amount. The original $135,000 plus the 2 additional loans of $22,500 each, a total of $180,000. Obviously, Sophie and Daniel didn't have a penny. They had spent everything. Then, my mom told them, with a coldness I had never seen in her, "You're going to sell everything you bought with our money. The car, the jewelry, the designer clothes, everything." Sophie tried to appeal to me to intercede for her, but I stood firm. "Sister, you made your bed, now lie in it." But here comes the interesting part. Turns out I had been keeping an ace up my sleeve during all these months. Remember, I mentioned that before Sophie opened her boutique, I already had 3 potential clients waiting. Well, one of those clients was precisely the shopping center chain where Sophie had rented her space. When the mall administrator found out about the whole situation, because news travels fast in this town, he contacted me directly. "Michael," he told me over the phone, "I understand your sister left some outstanding debts with us, back rent, services, deposits. Is there any way this can be resolved without having to go to legal proceedings?" That's when the perfect idea occurred to me. "Look," I proposed, "how about my company takes care of all my sister's debt in exchange for a preferential contract to handle all the technology systems for your shopping centers?" It was a win-win proposal. He got rid of the problem of collecting from Sophie, who obviously had nothing to pay with, and I got a contract worth 5 times more than what Sophie owed. The contract was signed last week, 3 years renewable to handle all security systems, point-of-sale inventory and communications for his 8 shopping centers. Total contract value, $1.8 million. When I told my parents about the contract, my dad stared at me with a mixture of admiration and respect I had never seen before. "Son," he said, "you didn't just solve your sister's problem, you turned it into a business opportunity. That's what being an entrepreneur is." As for Sophie, things haven't gone well for her at all. She and Daniel finally divorced. He couldn't stand the pressure of the debts and family scandal. Now she lives alone with her 2 kids in a small apartment and works as a saleswoman in a department store. My parents help her with the kids' expenses, but they no longer treat her with kid gloves like before. The relationship completely changed when they realized they had been feeding a manipulator for years. As for my relationship with my parents, I can honestly say it's now better than it ever was. They see me as an equal, respect my decisions, and even ask me for business advice for the hardware store. Last week, my dad made me an interesting proposal. "Son, your mom and I are thinking about retiring in a few years. Would you be interested in expanding the hardware store with a technology department? Home security systems, home automation, that kind of thing." It's ironic. Now that I no longer need their support, now that I no longer need them to believe in me, now they want to be part of my success, but you know what? I'm going to help them. Not because they owe it to me, but because now they finally treat me with the respect I deserved from the beginning. My consultancy keeps growing. We now have 12 employees and just opened a second office in the neighboring city. Next year we're planning to expand nationally, and I achieved all this without their initial help. I built all this after they told me my plan was too risky, that I didn't have what it takes to run a business. The best part? Sophie still blames me for all her problems. Last month she sent me a text saying I destroyed her life by turning the family against her. She still doesn't understand that her problems are the consequence of her own actions, but I don't care anymore. I have a successful business, a loving wife, 2 beautiful kids, and finally, the respect of my parents. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. Gracias por acompañarme en esta increíble historia. ¿Qué opinas de todo lo que pasó? ¿Crees que Michael hizo lo correcto o se pasó de la raya? ¿Has vivido algo similar con tu familia? Si te gustó esta historia, dale like, suscríbete para más contenido así y comparte para que más personas puedan escuchar estas experiencias reales. En pantalla tienes otro video con una historia igual de impactante. Haz clic para seguir viendo más drama familiar que no te puedes perder. No te vayas del canal, que tenemos mucho más contenido esperándote. Nos vemos en el próximo video.